No.
All right, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to call your meeting to order.
Good evening and welcome to the Ward One Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting for Monday, December 12th. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Vincent,
Here.
Daftari,
Here.
Pisevich, absent at this time. Ross,
Here.
Strunk, absent at this time. Starrick, absent at this time. Thiessen.
Here.
Thank you. Wager, absent.
Here.
Oh, you are present. Thank you. And Warninghouse, absent at this time. Also in attendance is Councilmember Breckus. Mr. Chair, you do have a quorum of the Ward One NAB.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to item A2. Public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. It is not limited and is limited to no more than 3 minutes for each commentator. Do we have public comment?
We do have public comment. First to speak tonight is Anna O'Brien, followed by Fred and Amanda Contreras. If you'll please stand up and state your name for the record when you begin your comment. Anyone else who would like to give comment, please fill out a form over in the corner. Ms. O'Brien, would you like to give comment? Yep, stand right where you are. If you can just make sure you project a little bit just so our folks who are on Zoom can hear you, that'd be appreciated.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Anna O'Brien. I live at 2040 Idlewild Drive. I am here because I'm concerned about a proposed development that's going to be on my back fence at 2100 Riviera. I have lived in the neighborhood for 36 years. My family has lived in that house for 58 years. And I think the neighborhood has been very quiet and very stable all this time. And I think the addition of this fiveplex is going to be a detriment to this neighborhood. This piece of property that they are planning to tear down has been there an awful long time. I know the family that lives there. Now that it's been sold, it's been a rental. And I think that the property has pretty much been ignored. Fences falling down, I've had garbage thrown in my yard. I've tolerated multiple parties going late into the night. And I always am, now that this fiveplex is coming along, which is going to be right on my fence line, is going to be 5 times the trouble that I've already tolerated for the last couple of years. If you look at the drawing, it's ridiculous. It's going to be more than 2 stories, being that it's going to be a garage. And that's going to be nothing but a huge block of my backyard, and also the surrounding houses that have to tolerate it being large. And I have gone around the neighborhood and collected a few of my neighbors, and they are trying to say that they're not in favor of this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next to speak are Fred and Amanda Contreras, followed by Tim Hosfeld.
I live on Salmon Drive, 1411 Salmon. I'm Samuel. That was my old address. And my concern is, number one, there's 5 units there, but mostly I'm concerned that we are here in Riviera, but when we're over here, but my next door neighbor, their whole backyard is going to be the 2-story units are going to be able to just look down into all our yards, but they are going to be totally blocked. So that was my concern with that, is that it's big and they're going to be looking right down into our backyards. Mine, but theirs mostly. Thanks.
Thank you. Fred, did you want to continue with her time?
The only other thing I want to get, kind of like the first neighbor mentioned, is the size. I mean, five units on that lot, yes, you can, it's just going to be so crammed in. And the building is going to be so big, like I said, we ran into the same situation in another neighborhood before, which just immediately brought down the price of the value of the home around it, but also the privacy. Like I said, people were in, they built condos in Oakland, or right behind where we're at, where there was nothing before, your privacy completely went away. There was no privacy. Like I said, the main thing, yeah, I wouldn't have any objections to it if it was just 2 units, a single story unit, just break it down instead of being so high. It doesn't need, I think we're overbuilding in that particular area for what they need, but obviously it's his land, he can do what he wants to do or try to do what he wants to do, but I don't think he's taking into consideration anybody else's thoughts about what is going on down there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is Tim Hosfeld, followed by Scott Wright.
My name is Tim Hosfeld, and we live at 1419 Samuel. We've been at that property for 38 years. And when we first arrived, we were the young ones. And now our neighborhood has completely revitalized with young families and children, a lot of children are here. This property, the existing property right now is right up on the property line of my next door neighbor. And this actual structure is right at the property line, and they will definitely be able to get into their house, and they have a daughter. Take up just a small portion of my backyard, but the noise from just that one unit has been terrible. I can't imagine what it would be like with 5. But it doesn't appear that there's been consideration for the families who are there, the children, and those of us who have been in the areas for a lifetime.
Scott Wright, followed by Daleen O'Brien.
Hey, Scott Wright, 2040 Iowa Drive, so just right there, right behind it. I am mainly concerned about just the nature of the neighborhood. I'd like to get beyond the fact that it'll just completely block my garden, because they're building over 2 stories, and I won't be able to do anything anymore back there. I'll try to push that to the side, but just the general idea of, I don't think a single house in the entire neighborhood has underground parking or first floor that's 6 feet above grade. So just the general, not even trying to match the neighborhood is pretty much just a joke. The elevations don't look like anything in the neighborhood at all. There's really just, I mean, it was all, like mentioned before, it was a poorly managed property. The kids, the college kids that were there were just putting chairs on the roof. And that was just a 1-story building and super invasive to all of our privacy of all the houses around. So let alone we're gonna have 2 plus, since the max height is above just a normal 2-story building. So I'm just really concerned with this. Obviously, whoever is trying to build here doesn't care about the neighborhood at all, doesn't care about anything. They just saw that the multifamily zoning was there in place. It's fine. I don't think anyone in the neighborhood would care. They changed the 5-bed, 3-bath, whatever it is, right into a 3-plex. I think they can legally do that, and no one's gonna bat an eye. But if they're trying to build over 2 stories, it's a lot process.
Thank you. Daleen O'Brien.
So I live at 24 Iowa Drive, and my house is a multi-generational house, and I will be the next multi-generation owner. And so I'm very concerned about this blocking my garden, looking into my yard, my neighbor's yards. I'm very protective of the children that already and will live around that property, that always have. It's a very sought after neighborhood due to the schools that are zoned for it. It's zoned for Reno High, for Swope, for Hunter Lake, Roycon. It's like one of the highest priced market neighborhoods. It's very styled, driven, friendly, sought after neighborhoods next to the river, next to the park, and there are apartment complexes there, but they're already established. They do have their own neighbors. We have other apartments. There is a 6-plex, which I think somebody could be like, oh, well, there's already a 6-plex. Well, that 6-plex has been established since the 60s. And the neighboring apartment complex, they have a super strict landlord, and we never have an issue, but the parking is an issue. And even though they say they're gonna put an underground parking garage, I kind of could see how they might just brush that aside, and that might not happen to meet the requirements of making the building shorter. And also, there's no parking. If they want guests, we already have people who are visiting both apartment complexes and neighbors that are parking quite a bit away just to park in front of our house. And yeah, it's just a privacy thing and it also won't match the neighborhood. It blocks a lot of views of the mountains and the river. It's just kind of, it'll just bring down the property value. It'll bring down like how beautiful the neighborhood is and how cute and private and like, even though it's like Idlewild, like, it like matters to me a lot, cause like this is gonna be like where, like hopefully my parents, like grandbabies are gonna like. And like, I'm just really worried about it, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I don't have any other public comments signed in at this time. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? No one in the audience. Transitioning to those on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand at this time. Seeing none, Mr. Chair, transition back to you for close of public comment into your next agenda item.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item A3, approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting, December 12th, 2022. Has everybody had a chance to review? Any changes or?
I move, this is Rhonda Tyson. I move that we accept the agenda.
Second. First and second, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, that passes. We're going to move on to item A4, approval of the minutes from September 12th, 2022. Has everybody had a chance to review those? We're going to need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. We'll move on to item A5, council liaison report.
Okay, happy holidays to everyone and hope the year is ending well for all. I'm Jen Breckes from the city council member. I give just a brief update. We have a lot on our agenda today, and I'm glad we decided to have a December nap. I think we were maybe the only one that did, so that worked out well. The council, as most people know, has a charter requirement to meet twice a month. And twice a year in June, July, and December, January, we front load our meetings 1 week after the other. And then the next month we backload them. So there's a quote break. And so we had a meeting last Wednesday and we have one this Wednesday, and then we'll be in a break till mid-January. After possibly the most abbreviated meeting schedule I've ever seen in my 10 years on the council, all through the fall, and then the manager with the mayor set the agenda. We have a real big one this week. And we have a lot of things we haven't been meeting on, so I anticipate we'll have a very busy January and hopefully moving into a strategic planning workshop. The council hasn't sat for a strategic planning workshop since the fall of 2019 with a different city manager. And now we have 3 new members, and they deserve the chance to have their fingerprints on the strategic plan. And if you're not, kind of fine tuning that and then putting it to work program, you're really not being very strategic, and tendency for cities to go in a bunch of different directions and then nothing gets done well. So that's what I'm looking forward to January, but then also in the first quarter budgeting. We have a big financial review on the agenda next week or to Wednesday. And in prep for that, I'm struck by how our fiscal condition has been so unprecedented in the last 2 years with the fiscal recovery money that came to us. It was our largest revenue source this last fiscal year. So how do you then normalize to the new economic conditions we're at? It's going to be a very interesting budgeting. And then we roll up our budget by May. So a lot to think about in the first part of the new year with 3 new members. That's a big change to the body. Moving just to ward items, we're going to talk about the Mountain View project, the close up of our annual city road project. And I look forward to hearing from staff about that. The development projects that I've been kind of most focused on is really trying to figure out what's slowing down. I'm seeing signs of slowing down our projects, and that always comes with issues, particularly some of these ones that are tight and urban. And so I do think we're moving into new conditions, and it's gonna be interesting to see what's stalled and what's not stalled. The one that seems most stalled is the Jacobs right now, and that's stalled by litigation with the citizens group. But that was more of an agreement, not physical construction, although they are doing physical construction at the corner of Arlington and First Street as a part of land that they bought, tore down a motel, got the city council. I decided to sell them a parking lot that was used by the public for a long time. And they're incorporating that into the development, but they seem to be building something there, maybe a new parking lot, a private parking lot, I think is what the permit was. So that's the one I'm focusing on the most. A lot of people have asked me, for example, what's going on with that hotel, the Kimpton, the Island Kimpton, haven't heard a whole lot about that. And as you move into new development cycle, I've been through a bunch over the years, some things start to fall off, so I'm not spending brain power on it anyway. It's a private development, but I am starting to see signs again. Storm preparedness. I have not heard too much, like, oh gosh, things are terrible. So I think this storm was handled pretty well, although it is very icy out there. But I, have not heard too much, and we're going to be in cold temperatures. So the runoff is not going to be as significant as it probably could have been. So what I've been hearing the last couple of years is where are the plows, that was certainly big time last year. And then also just, when you get that fast runoff, it's just really, we have a lot of spot issues there. We've done some improvements, but spot issues. But this one so far has not been a lot of noise in my ear. Special events downtown continue to be a problem. I think that's a staffing and management issue. Heard a lot from our good friends at St. Thomas Aquinas when there was no advance notice inconsistent with the ordinance that there was a turkey trot when they were trying to have a Thanksgiving is a faith day. A lot of faiths do faith, and that was very problematic. So the word has been brought back to the manager's office. We need to have focus when we're gonna have special events downtown and close off roads. We need to tell people, particularly the churches, because they have older, people walking, who are accustomed to parking different places. And it doesn't help when you've sold a public parking lot to private interests that has cut up that area there. Worcester High School, some of you probably remember there was a traffic fatality there about 4 or 5 years ago at the intersection of Harvard and Plum, young gal on her way to school. That became a non-event in terms of an issue that needs solution. NDOT did a big study. It never saw the light of the day before the council. Was basically like, oh, it's going to be really expensive to build a bridge over Plum Lane. It's just a school zone that's too close to freeway interchange and so on. Well, now with redistricting, I have a whole lot more walk-in population for Worcester because I got everything to the south there that dead ends over there, and I am not letting it go. And even if just talking about it, because I have the study, comes with a big fiscal condition, but it's known that there are problems at Worcester, and it is just not bubbling up with NDOT or RTC as a project. So anyone wants to see that study and sees, basically a dismissive, technical study on, vulnerable children walking to school. It's in my inbox and I can get it to you. We'll talk about what's going to come on our next agenda, but I don't want to lose track of, NDOT had comments out for McCarran in a loop study, and we get to have a part of West McCarran here. And I never got a copy of the city comments on that study. So I'm hoping to have those distributed before our next meeting. And then just to let everyone know, well, a couple things is one, I welcome Tyler Shaw to be our new liaison. I'm sure he'll introduce himself in a second. So that's great. I sit on TUMWA still, and TUMWA has a really involved standing committee for citizens, and they've had a hard time finding a representative, and I'd love a representative to come from Ward 1 who lives in a multifamily development to represent the perspective of someone who's probably paying their water bill through probably a meter, landlord meter. And then it's put into your rent. But there are some issues I've heard from residents over the time about those sort of payment structures. So I really would love to hear from, just advertise. If you want to get involved, people are always asking me, what committee can I get on? If you live in a multifamily and want to get involved in Reno, reach out to me or Sonia Folsom at Tumwa to get on that standing committee as the multifamily rep. It's been vacant for a couple of years now. The last thing is, because we have a lot of people who I haven't seen in our neighborhood advisory booth. Oh, second. We did fix the map. The map is fixed. Okay, yay. And with all the neighborhoods, so Juniper Ridge. The last thing is we have a number of folks here who are here for different developments. There's a couple things is I usually don't comment on these because all 3 or 4 that I see are decisions that rest with the planning commission unless appealed. So if they're appealed, I sit like a judge. So I'm not going to have conversations with the developer, the consultants who want to reach out and get in my ear. I've been advised by the attorney not to do that, nor have side conversations with residents. Everything builds up on a record. But the important thing is the planning commission has final approval on all of these unless appealed. And the neighborhood advisory board is just a forum. So the planning commission is where the decision is made, that can be final, and that's where the most important comment and input should be. This is more fleshing out and informational. I will say though, this neighborhood advisory board has been asking for a good year or 2 from staff and has not heard about the Robb Drive terminus, because that's a major infrastructure improvements that are needed at that roundabout. There was a legacy approval there for grading and mining and some air quality permits. And one of these projects does look like that. So outside of that project, which I haven't heard from anyone, I've heard from one property owner there, to the degree that there's infrastructure planning there, that's going to be an issue very much on my mind. It's been on the minds of the folks who are down the hill from that development. It's been on the minds of folks who own property there in this neighborhood advisory board, because it's an unusual for Reno interchange in that it terminates, and this would be an extension, but the extension is limited because nothing's getting extended over that hill. So be watching that one closely. And we do not want piecemeal developer-driven development. We want policy plan development, and that which comes in timing with the infrastructure that's best suited for the area. So those are all of my updates. And I'll have a little bit to say when we get into the Mountain View, just because I've been out there quite a bit.
Any questions for Jen? Nothing out there, right? Nobody's raising hands. Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to item A6, staff liaison report.
I want to just note for the record, mostly for our minute taker, that member Werninghouse is present at 5:48 was when she walked in, just for the record. Staff update, I am actually Attorney Chief Innovation and Experience Officer, and I am pleased to introduce the new liaison for Ward 1. This is Tyler Shaw. He will be supporting Wards 1, 2, and the at-large member. To his left, I'll just note, because we do function as a team, we have Abby Mayorga is also joining us. She will be supporting Wards 3, 4, and 5. And we approach this as a team mentality to ensure that residents are getting the best level of service that we can provide. So I will be here for a couple more months to help with their training, and then we'll hand over the keys to them. But we are excited to have both of them present to help support the NABs and various functions, council member offices. Those are the only updates we have, unless council member has anything specifically that she would like to hear about otherwise. Great. All right.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to business items. We're gonna move on to item B1, Watt Street Neighborhood Street Rehabilitation Update.
What do you guys want me to present? Front here? Side?
That's where the, it will be out there.
Wherever you like, and
Okay.
we'll progress your slides, John. Just let us
Okay,
know when you
awesome.
want us to.
You'll see me switching.
Okay.
Key. Right. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Smith. I'm a senior civil engineer for the Public Works Department. I am here tonight to bring you an update on the total investment in Ward 1 this construction season. Discuss the status of the street projects that were confirmed by council in July 2020. And lastly, give you an update on the Watt Neighborhood Street project and why it will be placed on winter pause. So first, I want to update the group on all the projects that. Next slide.
Sorry.
That's all good. First, I want to update the group on all the projects that were completed in Ward 1. As you very well know, there the 4 neighborhood street projects in Ward 1 that were confirmed by there was a lot of construction in Ward 1. There's 4 neighborhood street projects in this ward. We had the slope at $28 million, approximately $28 million was invested into Ward 1. We completed the slope, the Humboldt North and Humboldt South Street rehabilitation projects. But tonight I wanted to update the group on the Watt Street neighborhood project. A lot of great improvements occurred in this neighborhood. We have the Watt Neighborhood Street Rehabilitation Project, the Rosewood Wash Drainage Improvement Project, and the Truckee Meadows Water Authority Main and Service Replacement Project. This counts to over $10 million invested into the infrastructure of the Watt neighborhood. The Watt Neighborhood Street Project was awarded by council in July 2022. We had a short construction window and we're optimistic with trying to complete all of these improvements before the winter. However, there were numerous projects in the neighborhood that completed later than expected. There were supply chain issues for procurement of materials for those projects, and the early winter temperatures has put this project on a construction pause. We have accomplished a lot to date, including all of our underground improvements. We've installed 0.4 miles of new sewer main. We installed 21 new sewer manholes, 17 new storm drain catch basins. Next slide. We've also completed all the concrete improvements in the neighborhood for nearly, in the next couple of weeks, we'll finish the remainder items. We've installed 2.4 miles of curb and gutter, 1.3 miles of new sidewalk and driveways, and 23 new ADA pedestrian ramps to improve, will drastically improve the connectivity, the accessibility throughout the neighborhood. This is a quick overview of the timeline for the project. I talked about the underground and concrete improvements. This month, the contractor plans to wrap up the work for the winter and come back in March when the temperatures warm up. This slide may look familiar to some of you, maybe not to all of you, but this was a notice that city staff hand delivered to the neighborhood last week. It was on the notice. We received a lot of great feedback, and the majority of the concerns were, what are we going to do about the gap between the new curb and the roadway? Will we have to continue to use the plates to access our driveways? And when will landscape be completed? The contractor's task for the winter pause addresses the majority of the concerns that we heard from the neighborhood. The contractor plans to remove all the cones and metal plates from the area. They'll fill in the gaps between the concrete improvements and the road, remove tripping hazards and abrupt transitions. This is called temporary transition sloping, shown on the slide. So on the left-hand picture, you can see when we install curb and gutter, we do have to remove part of the roadway in front of the gutter and some of the improvements behind, depending if there's sidewalk or not, we have to remove stuff behind the curb. The contractor will also fill in the gap that is behind the curb and fix as much of the landscaping that does not require vegetation. They also sweep and clean up the construction site, and the contractor plans to wrap up this area for winter by Friday, December 23rd. Once water is wrapped up for the winter pause, S&T will move to Lakeside. Sierra Nevada Construction will move to Lakeside Drive for a sewer main replacement project. This project consists of replacing or upsizing 1,800 feet of new sewer main on Lakeside Drive, and the boundaries are southern boundary is Country Club Drive, and the northern boundary would be Hillcrest. Council approved this work in July of 2022, and it's been with the Watt Neighborhood Street Project to reduce the number of contracts, thus reducing contractor overhead and the number of contractors working in the area. This also limits the number of disruptions to the property owners. This work originally planned to be performed after the street work in the Watt neighborhood, but since much of this work is not weather dependent, the work will be performed this winter and the final paving will be completed in spring of 2023 when they come back. When the temperatures warm up, they come back. After Sierra Nevada construction wraps up Watt neighborhood for the winter, they will then move to complete the lakeside sewer project in January or February. And when the temperatures are warm enough to pave in March, SNC will move back to the neighborhood to complete the project. This includes paving the streets, installing all the new street signs, the signage and striping, and they will do the final project cleanup. If you have any questions, please let me know. My contact information is on this slide. Thank you.
I have a question on Watt Street. So when it rains, let's say we get a heavy rain. And that roadway, which is basically just dirt, it starts to pothole, are they coming back to fix that stuff? And where does the water
If they're exposed, yes, that will be temporary patched. It may look like dirt right now because they've been running construction equipment constantly over it, but they will sweep and clean that area. And then any of the dirt areas will be paved with temporary asphalt pavement until they come back in the spring. So there will,
It's not asphalt now, right?
it is asphalt. It may not look like it, but it is asphalt. So when they sweep it and clean it, it'll look different.
So does it have its final lift up to the curb, up to the gutter? That's what I'm asking.
No, there's no new pavement at all on Watt. That's what we're gonna come back.
Right, so
in
it's-
March.
So if there's potholes that are created during this, then they'll come back and fix them during it, or they won't bother?
No, they'll come back immediately and fix it. Yeah, so please save my contact information. I'm the guy to get that done. If a pothole does occur, we will fix that immediately.
Right, so water, since it's sitting, the roadway is sitting below the gutter,
Mhm.
where does the water go?
Is the roadway sitting below or it should be slightly above, and then with that safety slope or that transition, it will travel to the back.
That was a good question.
But yeah, thank you for your question.
Heather, can you bring up my slides? So I went out there, the day before the first storm, so we had a storm this week and one the week before, and, you covered a lot, and that was a good presentation. But, you know, big concerns, because never seen a project not make it. And this body was wondering, is SNC gonna get under penalties, under the agreements? Because it seems like over promised, under delivered. So what's going on?
So because of the delay of the other projects, we have so many projects in the Watt neighborhood. The delay of procurement of materials also put those projects into delay. We knew that going into advertising the Watt Street project, and knew that it was a possibility that those projects would also push our project. So we had to write our contract in a way that allowed the contractor to come back in the spring if we didn't meet temperatures due to weather. The contractor did work, we put in the contract that the contractor must work diligently, try to complete this project by winter. But because of those early temperatures hitting, we weren't able to do any of the roadway paving work.
Okay, it's an answer, if they had an out, and I get it, but can you progress, I mean, that, you're saying everything's gonna be buttoned up, but what is this guy gonna do? Okay,
He'll have a new driveway before the winter wrap up,
okay. And
if it's not already there. I mean, they
Yeah,
have
it
three.
was 2 Fridays ago, it's gonna cure, it's gonna be good, okay,
Yes,
and then next one, please. And then this person whose yard has become essentially a staging grounds, like, the big, 2 of those little kiddie pools are in his driveway, that's all gonna get buttoned up.
it'll all be removed. Yes.
Yeah, and you'll be able to manage the drainage, okay, and then let's move on. And then, what Mike was asking is gonna be how, and I lived in this neighborhood for, from 2001 to 2007, and there's a lot of drainage that runs down through here. So how's all this gonna get carried through with this gap and all?
Yeah, so this gap will be filled in with temporary asphalt pavement. It will be a hard surface for the water to travel to the gutter pan. And then those are new, we call them type 4 catch basins. They will be able to capture a lot more water than the old catch basins that we had.
Uh-huh.
So it will act more or less like it used to act.
Okay, gosh, the cost overrun too is another question, but I guess we'll deal with that through budget. And then the last one, I am a fan of our street work projects, but I've never seen a year like this that I really do believe, because there were many, and this was the one, the Watt was the one that came into my redistricted neighborhood, so I wasn't as focused on it, that there have been and I guess when there's a failure of a system, it's multiple pieces, but I look at the contractors, because, Granite was in SWO, California Avenue was an absolute nightmare. It's like, I couldn't believe the way that street was left for the weekend, in a high traffic area, so I'm not happy with the contractors. But, to their benefit, I can't remember if it's SNC or Granite over here is, and I, because I've been, doing these for a number of years now, they do make property owners whole, particularly landscaping. And then look at this, this was right before Thanksgiving. And this property owner is having her new, retaining wall made, great color choice. They were out there painting it. I mean, they were really, I think it was a new retaining wall to the property to deal with the grade, and it was on Humboldt, or maybe it was Lander, I can't remember. But they do, go the end to the ultimate end and make the property owners whole. But I just don't even know on Watt Street if that's going to make up what these people have to live through on this winter. So I am really, really disappointed in the way this came together.
We did push hard to try to get them to complete it before winter. Yeah.
Well, you just hope lessons have been learned by everyone.
On Watt Street, on Wild Rose heading to Lindley, that street was never originally in scope for any kind of resurfacing or improvements, but through the duration of this project, Wild Rose has deteriorated a lot from Watt to pretty much Lindley. So is there any plan to come back and address all the deterioration caused by a lot of the heavy equipment that's been turning in and out of that particular intersection?
Yeah, Wild Rose was not part of this street rehabilitation project. It was just outside of that threshold number, our pavement condition index number that we used to pick these streets. It is, however, because of this project and knowing that that was going to happen to that road, it is part of a surface treatment plan that we will have 2023 next year, right? Next year, so it should have a surface treatment, like a cake seal monitor.
Some of the sidewalks have also been damaged. Will those be fixed as part of?
By the contractor.
Sure, by the contractor.
I mean, if the contractor did damage to the sidewalk, yes, it's the contractor's responsibility to fix it. If they are just damaged because of wear and tear, and it's not part of this project, then we can discuss that if it's a tripping hazard or something like that. But if it's outside of the project, then we're not doing any concrete improvements on Wild Rose.
Has there been any monitoring to identify that the contractors can be held accountable for it, or would they just simply say we didn't do this and it's wear and tear?
No, we have, before a project goes out, we have somebody go through the project with a camera. Everything's videotaped and photos are taken. And then we have a before and after picture. Yeah, I have all of that.
Cool, thank you.
That's kind of a naive question. I'm in the Humboldt South area, and so we just finished that, and it's lovely, but all these streets are just deadly in the winter. They're so icy and they're terrible. Is there anything as part of this repaving that has been thought of to make them better in the winter time, or is that just not possible?
I think you're getting more traction on those older streets because there's more cracking and surfaces are starting to peel and break apart, and you're getting a nice smooth new road. It's gonna maybe build ice up a little easier there, but no, there's nothing that we do to improve that. Our street operations and plows help with that.
All right, Jerry has a question I see online there.
Yeah, there just seems to be a problem with seeing and advancing some of the PowerPoint plates and the pictures.
Are they just not updating on your screen?
Correct.
Okay, I did include all the slides in the board packet. I'll go ahead and forward that to you right now. And you should be able to advance through that if there's any other technical problems.
Thank you.
Of course. And there's one more question. Is it a public comment or?
He put his
Question.
hand, he put his hand down.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
We're gonna move on to development projects. So as Jenny mentioned earlier, the following presentations by the project developer representatives, the NAB members, and the public will have the opportunity to ask questions about the project and provide feedback. The NAB will not take any action on development projects. NAB members and public are encouraged to complete the development project review form with their input. All development project review forms submitted to the community liaison at the NAB meeting or via online forum will be submitted to the Reno Planning Commission for consideration of the development review process. The City of Reno planning staff will be available for questions, but will not provide project presentation. Sorry, so the point of this is that this board doesn't make any decisions on it, where is equal as you guys making these comments. So those forms are available online. Do we have any here today?
We do not have them in hard
forms?
copy. They're all online, but we'll send them out to the board members. And then constituents are encouraged to submit their public comments to the planning commission.
So everybody understand that. So moving forward, we're going to move on to item B.2.1 LDC 230015 TCA Mayan multifamily.
Mr. Chair, members of the NAB, Andy Earl with Wood Rogers. I'm actually, there's three projects. They're very closely tied together. So my presentation actually covers kind of all three at once. So it's your items 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. I'll handle each one kind of individually, but it's kind of one presentation, just kind
Right,
of.
so that's what I was going to ask. So
Yeah.
we'll do it. We'll do them. And if there's a question about each one specifically, before we get to the end, if they want to ask a question about that, then I'll just have you keep moving on all the way through 2.3.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. So these, the project, the TCA properties, it's collectively made up of three projects. We submitted them as separate projects to the city of Reno because they had slightly different entitlements that were required for each of them. And there were three different residential product types, so it was a little cleaner in the long-term overall design and permitting process that we'd have to go through to have them separate. So just for the kind of transparency there, that's why we did this. The properties are located on that terminus of the southern terminus of Rod Drive. It's kind of that plateau area that's on the south side of I-80 there. Consists of two parcels that are just under 35 acres. The master plan is suburban mixed use on the majority of it with a small single family neighborhood on the far west side. The zoning is general commercial, again, on that will be the eastern portion. I'll identify it here in a minute. And single family 3, SF3 on the west side. They are all vacant, but they have had historical grading activities that have gone on. Next slide. So a little closer view here, and this identifies kind of the three different project areas. This is all within the city of Reno, obviously bound by I-80 on the north side there, and then existing single family, both in the city and in the county to the south of us. We're proposing the three residential projects. So the green portion, which is on the east side there, is multifamily project. The kind of yellow orange in the middle is a townhome project. And then the blue on the far west side, on the left side of the screen, is the single family detached portion. Each one of them, because we submitted them separately, each one of them, and this, if you look at the civil plans, I should Billy Anderson with Loomis and Associates is actually the engineer on it. Wade Hall is the developer here to answer questions as well. In each of the different plan sets that we submitted, each one had to stand on its own. So even though they are kind of interrelated, each individual project has to kind of have its own, stand on its own merits. And so each one identifies the connection to Rod Drive, as well as actually the entire collector street that would be built down to this cul-de-sac that's kind of identified on the west side with a secondary emergency access. So each one of those projects, if built independently, would have to build all that and prove that out individually. Next slide. So the first portion, this is on that west side, and we've got a key down here on the bottom. So this is the further east side is for the multifamily portion. This is in the general commercially zoned property or a portion of the property. In code, anything, multifamily projects that are more than 100 units require a conditional use permit. So we have a conditional use permit just for that use. Also, there's small portions that trigger cuts greater than 20 feet. And really it's in this area on the far south side where we've got, this is a maintenance access road that goes down to a culvert, a storm drain outlet. And then on the main road, on this little portion through here, there's a little sliver that goes over that 20-footer cut. So 200 units proposed on this about 14-acre portion of the overall project area. Proposed 391 parking spaces, 230 are required. And the parking is provided in two forms. Each these buildings, you'll see they've got single car driveways, and then there's obviously surface parking that's pretty typical of multifamily development. About 6 acres of open space, which is mostly down on the south side here, and just over an acre, or just about an acre, formal landscaping that would be provided throughout. A couple different amenity areas, one small one down here on the southeast side, and then next to the rec center and leasing office would be another recreational amenity that would be provided. As I mentioned, each of these projects has to stand on their own merits and has to provide the infrastructure to serve it. So with this, you would have the construction of the Rob Drive extension and a new collector roadway to serve it, as well as construction all the way down to this cul-de-sac here and access to Leroy Drive. These are proposed as 3-story, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Handicap. What's that? Handicap parking? Yes, there would be handicap parking provided on the surface lots. Next slide. So the next portion is this middle portion is the townhomes, 2-story townhomes with 2-car garages. There's 2 types of townhomes that are provided in here. These kind of along the southern boundary and on the west side are kind of more of a traditional front-loaded garage, in a 2-car garage. And then the central portion here and on the east side are more of an alley load. So if you park behind and your front door is actually on the front, on the opposite side of the garage from it. Just about 14 acres, 202 units, 440 parking spaces are provided for the 400, just over 400 that are required. 6 acres of common area open space. Again, it's mostly that area down to the south there in the drainage. 91,000, about 2 acres or so of formal landscaping is provided. And again, this would also have to have that extension of Rob Drive and the new collector roadway with the gated emergency access to leave. These, I think I mentioned 2-story townhomes. Next slide. And then lastly, we have on the far west side, about 6.5 acre portion, 16 lots, either single family detached lots that are provided on this western portion. They've got an open space buffer along the west and south boundaries, and then more native open space with some trails on the eastern side. It would have the gated emergency access coming off the cul-de-sac. So no public access would get through there other than pedestrians and bikes. It does have on-street parking. There's no homes that are proposed with this at this time. It's just a subdivision to create the lots. And then you would have your typical front yard landscaping and street trees that would be required as per code. Next slide. So one of the things that I think Councilwoman Breckus brought up was this Rob Drive interchange, the extension of Rob Drive. We did have a traffic study was commissioned, not just to deal with the TCA property specifically, but to look at the entire kind of southern plateau area south of Interstate 80. 3 of the property owners are working together to kind of comprehensively help to plan this and plan those improvements. We've been proactive in that and submitted informally, not as a formal permit process at this point, but informally, we've submitted to NDOT for their input and feedback on that traffic study. And then we'll work towards schematic design of the interchange improvements that will be required. For the TCA property, so just for the 3 that we're looking at tonight, there are minimal improvements. We'd obviously have to extend the road, extend Rob Drive down to most likely a roundabout. The concept of that is identified in the traffic study. And then the collector roadway that would serve the 3 TCA portions. At at the time of the TCA construction, really just a stop condition is required at this interchange here. Ultimately, there's a build out portion or a build out proposal that is identified in the traffic study that would have new traffic signals, widenings, turn lanes, things like that. That's what's been submitted to NDOT. We're waiting their feedback on that. And then ultimately, we anticipate, we would have conditions of approval on this project and the other projects that may come forward here in the near future in order to appropriately construct those improvements with commensurate with the actual development that was necessitated. The property owners are working through a kind of a joint development agreement to share in those costs. And those would happen kind of, again, like I said, commensurate with the development. So with that, that concludes my presentation on the 3 projects. I'd be happy to answer.
And I have one question. So there's only one entrance to these 3 properties, right? And only that there's an emergency access through Leroy. How come it's not 2-way?
Well, we anticipated that, this is a little bit more rural area. Sorry. A little more rural area down here. We anticipated that, probably wouldn't be seen positively by those neighbors to the south that have public access through there to be left as this emergency only.
Questions?
Any other questions?
Collector Road, it comes through property owned by this project proponent, or does it go through others?
It does go through others. So there's an adjacent property here, which is kind of along right at the interchange. And so there's an agreement already in place between those property owners to establish that right of way.
And each application has an affidavit from that property owner granting those access easements?
There's already formal agreements between the 2 parties, but yes, we are getting that.
Yeah.
Over that today.
Well, we're looking at, from the city's permitting and the public interest, not, deal making among, property owners who, want to co-share, interests. But the staff analysis, I'm sure would go into that, but, from an analysis of suitability, you've got this collector road that looks, what is it? 3/4 of a mile? What's the length on it? How many linear feet?
I don't know.
But it's going to serve this property that has what sort of range of land uses going through truck stop allowance?
It's zoned general commercial, so general commercial allows for a whole host of commercial type uses and as well as residential. Truck stop, I don't know. But
yeah, so that's going to be a real interesting analysis from the staff planner to talk about, what we're putting 200 new residents driving through on a collector road. We really don't usually see new roadways into new neighborhoods going through others that are undesignated as part of the project. That's going to be a very interesting analysis and conversation by the planning commission.
Other question? I see Jerry has a question.
Would you please, could you please describe briefly your stormwater plan and put the map back up?
I will turn that over to the project engineer, Billy Anderson, to answer this one. Overall, next one. Or best.
Yeah, so these developments will receive typical city storm drain. A lot of it's going to be public storm drain system, typical you might see in a normal city street. Catch basins go into public storm drain mains. There'll be some detention basins in the single family, again, for city of Reno requirements. Is your question more about construction related? Or is that
What's your design storm for detention?
design storm is a 100-year storm?
And you have detention for all 3 developments?
We actually have detention for the single family. So because of how large the watershed is above this, they actually have a culvert that goes across I-80 right here, a pretty large one. And The apartments in the townhomes will drain into that same drainage way, but because they're on the leading edge of the watershed, they'll actually discharge their stormwater faster. They'll discharge their stormwater before the peak stormwater of the watershed above it hits the same drainage way. Does that make sense? I apologize, it might not have been a great.
Well, I guess I am kind of confused because your multifamily sites definitely have more impervious area than the single family. So I'm a little confused as to why a site like that wouldn't have detention.
Got it. No, that's totally understandable. And in a normal situation, that would actually be the case. We actually did an analysis and found that because we're actually increasing the impervious areas, we're actually going to be decreasing the peak flows downstream by getting the water off the site faster before the water above it gets to the same place. Does that make sense? Did my second try do better?
Well, it makes sense.
Sure. Wait.
Here we go. I think this pipe that was put into the freeway a few years ago is huge. I think it's like 60-inch pipe. It's basically getting this whole private water. And so what I think he's trying to say is right now, because the current existing condition, this slowly goes off the site and joins as this rain comes down this way. Whereas the way it shows in all the calculations, this water will exit prior to all this flowing down. So it's like a head of a big head of flow. I think that's what you're trying to say. Right? That's what I'm trying to say. Does that make better sense or more confused?
Yeah, but it takes it down to the river. Where does it go? Does it go down?
Before we get to the river.
Yeah.
So this drainage way is what let's see, this drainage way comes down through here, goes underneath.
The highland.
Exactly. The highland.
Go down there and so.
And then I think there's a cross here.
There's a small culvert.
And then I honestly don't, I'd have to look at. If I could, I mean, if you really want to, we can bring up the county, what we call it words, the Washington County Regional Mapping System, and I'm sure we'll be able to figure it out if you really.
It's all surface. Once you get past Lavender Ridge, it's in the swale, it's from concrete. Surface down to.
Okay.
Well, maybe a good way to answer the question, have it for planning commission is what percentage of water flow this project adds to what's already a huge amount of water flow coming down. In other words, I think it's not much related to the amount of water that's flowing through that 60-inch. But I hear what you're saying, and I think that's a good question to have for the planning commission to answer more.
So, just so I understand, so a project of this nature that's increasing impervious area drastically isn't really required to have detention.
It depends on how
that's correct. Because of the calculations we did. So maybe a quick example, if you had a curb and gutter that was, I don't know, a mile long. And in the first 10 feet, I dumped in a gallon. And then the last 10 feet, I also dumped in a gallon. Everybody can understand that the first gallon is going to be gone before the second gallon gets to the beginning. Or if I double that amount of water, even, I'm not saying we're doubling the amount of water here, but if we double the amount of water in the beginning, the 2 gallons, that 2 gallons is still going to be gone before the last gallon gets to the same spot. That makes sense, because it's just time. It takes time for the water to flow from the top to the bottom.
Okay. I understand that concept of you know, the various time periods for moving water in through the project. I'm just surprised that there's no on-site detention required.
Well, I think the answer to that is it'll have to be proved out through the city plan check and final engineering. Right now, it shows that this, what he's talking about works, but as we, provide all the final engineering drawings, and this is just a bit of that. And the city reviews all the calculations, all the numbers, they'll do plan checks and either verify or say, oh, you need this or that, so. This is just a tentative map, not the final engineering or final map.
Any other questions?
I do. On the multifamily section, you say 200 units, 391 parking spaces. Do you have a breakdown for how many of each type of unit that's gonna be?
So it's based now on square footage, so 1,250 square feet, so any unit less than 1,250 square feet requires one space, anything over that requires two spaces. So there was a combination of garages.
Studios get no parking spaces.
No, they get one. Yeah, anything less than, so.
Well, studios are smaller than 1,200.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
So
the
single,
studios still get the parking space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms in the studio, but yes, a 1 bedroom, for example, get one space required as a minimum for providing,
A 2-bedroom would get 2 spaces.
depending on the size.
Depending on the size.
Yeah, and so there's garages and service spaces.
Would you be counting the garage?
Yeah, garages count towards the required. Yeah, correct.
so is the single family counted in that total?
No, that is just for multi-family. Yep, just for that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, also about parking for the town, unit, the one in the middle. Was there surface parking on there too, or is that all garage parking?
No, there is some surface parking. So each of those units has a 2-car garage. And then there's some surface parking, recognizing that guests are gonna come. So there's some little pockets that are spread throughout for that.
It'll be interesting to see what the staff planner and the engineering staff shows in terms of the relationship of this development sending water down through Anselmo, that street. So if I recall, that has some rather large detention facilities that are managed by the homeowners association there. Be interesting to see what that drainage report for those subdivisions that aren't that old showed in terms of the understanding of what the water is that's coming down and how that meets up to what's being provided by this project.
Yeah, can I ask you a question with that, man?
Yeah.
Is it meaning that you expect and so Truckee River Islands to have adequate?
When I hear the word, like above ground swales, that's uncontrolled water.
That's below, highway, I mean, that's below.
Yeah, but
That's what Lavender Ridge did.
yeah, water that is, and we saw this out of Bird Eye. Water that is not channelized coming off slopes and, sheet flowing through other people's property or is just not a way to control water. We did a lot of improvements over by Summit Ridge, in the last couple of years, and then over by, further to the west or to the east in terms of enlarging, but I don't think we've enlarged going all the way down from the river, down to the river on this side of McCarran.
So just to be clear, this isn't a channel, this is a natural or somewhat natural drainage way.
Natural drainage way, yeah, nothing
Drainage borders, is that?
don't exist in an urban setting like this, they really don't. It means it's created to be someone else's problem somewhere.
So I just want to be really clear. So we're not actually increasing the amount of the peak flow that's coming off the site. And that's an important thing. That's actually per city arena design manual and the overall regional drainage manual that we have to abide by as engineers.
Yeah.
So even though there's no detention, we are not increasing the peak flow that's coming off of this site. As a matter of fact, we're actually decreasing the amount of erosion that's going to come off this site by we'll actually be controlling the flows as they go down the hill underground. And so you actually have a lot less water coming down those hillsides and sheet flowing into a designed drainage system.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that a gazillion times from project proponents about how they deal with theirs, but ultimately, when you get a build out area, we have infrastructure inadequacies, and I haven't seen how many we have in this area, but I know all along the interstate where it slopes down to the river, we've invested bit by bit as they get built out. These natural channels just cannot handle and we get a lot of flooding. And the interesting thing is that Anselmo development, and I don't know if you guys did that one, you know, is just the one thing sitting there below you, but maybe it goes side off. And then how far is the Tumlock property? Where's the Tumlock property?
First east.
Any other questions for B21, B22, or B23? Everybody out there? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to item B24, LDC 23-0025, Riviera Planned Community.
Yeah, we've got a presentation.
And pulling it up right now.
My name is Mike Biggs. I'm with Mata Vista Consulting, and I'm the applicant's representative on this project. I think from the public comment, we're the project that everybody's here to see. So hopefully we can answer some questions and provide some perspective on the project. The first side. So the proposed project right at the corner of Idlewild and Riviera. It's zoned MF 14. If we go to the next slide, we'll kind of highlight. Everything around it is zoned MF 14, including across the street. And the darker orange is zoned MF 30 currently. The current master plan designation is MX, which is mixed neighborhood. And so our proposed project is consistent with the existing zoning and the master plan. If you click one more time, the master plan will come up. You'll see again, everything around this property is in that MX. The yellow is single family to the south and a little bit farther to the west. If you could go to the next project, the proposal is to demolish the existing residence. It's been in disrepair and mismanaged for a while. The intent is to bring in a 5-unit development. They will be sold individually. So it's not an apartment complex where you'll have different renters each month or each year, whatever the term is. They're going to be individually purchased, and there will be an owners association associated with the project to manage all of the landscaping, the drainage improvements, et cetera, associated with the project. Parking will be below ground in a 10 parking space, parking garage. That's integral to the project. There's no way for us to eliminate that and just throw the cars out on the street. It wouldn't comply with code at that point. And so we have designated on-site parking spaces for each of the units in conformance with the development code. And then the proposed guest parking would be on the street. There's room for 2 parking spaces on the street. And so that is the intent there. If we could go to the next slide. Here are some architectural renderings of what's going on with the project. This is from Riviera. And we're actually working through some of the comments from planning staff. We're working to increase the setback on the second story. It's allowed to be a 5-foot setback, but once you get over 28 feet, we have to go a little bit farther. And so we're working to bring that back in conformance with the code. And then you'll notice at the rear where we are abutting the single family homes to the south, those units have been brought down to where they're 2-story and they essentially sit down at existing grade. So not to look out over those existing single family residences. To the kind of northeast is an existing 2-story apartment complex, and then across the street is also a 2-story apartment complex. If you could go to the next slide, I think that is about the end of our presentation. Kind of short and sweet. I don't do a whole lot of the first one. I've been at it a long time. But I'm happy to answer any questions I can. I'm the civil engineer on the project. The architect is working remotely from Phoenix right now, so he couldn't make it. But happy to do my best to answer any questions you have. And,
I have a question. So go back to the plot plan if you would, or the.
Yeah.
What is the side clearing from the buildings of the property? Is that the property line right there on both sides?
Yeah, this is the property line. It's got a 5-foot setback to this wall. Then there's walkways through here. And then so it's this wall here that's right at the 5-foot.
So you said that the walkway there or not?
There's a pathway here. This is a walkway.
Okay. And then it's
same
5 feet
same on this side is a pathway.
to the neighbor's fence, right? So the neighbor's fence will.
Yeah, there's an existing little retaining wall here that we're planning on keeping and working with, but yeah.
And the parking is where?
So this is the main driveway and the parking is underneath in a 10-car parking garage below grade.
Okay,
And so it's the structure is kind of effectively 2.5 stories. The parking, the front units sit up above the parking garage. These do not. And so the parking garage is underneath these units here.
So you could point out the units if you would just for me.
There's a unit here. This is unit 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And they range in square footage from about 1,355 to 2,083 square feet.
So no backyard, really, there's no side yard, no
The
back.
backyard is back here.
And that's for everybody or just for those two and those?
It's a shared common area. And it's actually currently the existing house comes almost all the way. It's really nestled back in here. And so it's coming off of that.
So the
river property.
backyard from the building to the fence is how far? What's their backyard width? It doesn't look much, like maybe 10 feet?
It's 20 feet. I could pull out my.
That's all right.
computer and find out. I know it's dimensioned on my site.
120 feet, probably, right?
I believe so. I'd be more than happy to confirm that if you'd like.
All right, so questions? Does Jerry have his hand up? Wait a second. Well, let's get board questions first and then we got some public comment too on this or?
Mr. Chair.
That we haven't already heard.
Yes.
Yes, there's one. Okay, so any board questions?
Your hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so public, now I want to go into public comment on this one. Who was?
Jennifer and Michael.
Go for it, try it. Try it.
I was like, you would think many years of this, I would have.
So on public comment, we want you to state your name. You have no more than 3 minutes, so. Okay.
I am a teacher, I'll stand wherever you need.
Well, you weren't here for my spiel.
I was not, but I do respect you guys. Sorry I was not here. Obviously, I'm a teacher at Swope, just got done. Got the message today. Thank you to my neighbors for telling me about it. Jennifer Madalena, representing the Madalena family. I live right behind this project. So what's gonna happen for me when I bought this house? Sorry, I'm gonna get a little sentimental. We bought this house because it's a perfect house for us. We moved into this neighborhood because it was a residential neighborhood. I'm gonna go there for you, because as soon as I heard that we're gonna put up a 3-story building with underground parking in my backyard, like, that's not cool. To me, it's not. So I have my husband who's not here, he's at home with my daughter, taking care of homework. I'm a teacher at Swope, wearing my gear. It's unacceptable to me. I'm very sorry, I understand you guys need to make money, all that good jazz, but our livelihoods, I have my neighbors, they represented me earlier, thank you very much, we appreciate that. But it's kind of, to me, it's just kind of bogus, like, it's not okay. I'm gonna have people walking up, looking at this floor plan right now. I have people walking upstairs. What, you say 20 feet from my backyard? They're gonna be walking up. That has to be 5 feet. Right now, grant you that this property is actually on my property line already, and they never said anything to anybody about it. Because there's a little beautiful, I have pictures I can show you guys. The tree, you're right, it is in dismay.
I've lived with this property for the last 5 years. I didn't say anything about anything until this. The tree fell down. I called PG&E, or not PG&E, sorry, Nevada Energy, Nevada Energy. I called them, called my neighbor to come over and inspect it, because we care about our neighbor, or we care about our neighbors. And I take care of my neighbors, they take care of me, just like I said. To me, I'm just shell shocked that this is the first time I'm hearing about this. Sorry, I did get a little peek note that could have gotten thrown away. Right? Easily could have gotten thrown away. Unless my neighbors, who are standing here with me today, are saying something for us. This is going to impede on my privacy too. My privacy. I'm gonna have all these people looking into my backyard. You say no, but I'm walking upstairs. I have a 6-year-old. I have a baby. They have grandkids. You guys are working on them. You'll get there. Till then, ours is yours. But here's the big thing that I want to say. I do not approve of this. I'm very sorry. There are plenty of properties in Reno that you guys can do this on. Plenty of properties that you guys can do this on. Not in our neighborhood. That's not acceptable. Sorry. And then you want to build a driveway underground. How is that going to impact my structure too? That's something bigger than everybody else can acknowledge. I came in late, already wrote notes and questions for everybody that I need to ask. Who do I need to contest this to? I will come up to every single meeting that I need to. And I'm very sorry. I will give you my contact information. You give me yours, give me your business card. Everybody give me your business card. I'm not okay with this. It is my property right behind that. They're here because they are catapulting. I'm almost done. I don't know where these neighbors are, or you guys are there. I don't know where this neighbor is. Maybe he didn't get the memo. I literally just got done teaching at Swope to be here, got home, made dinner, and got over here. Please excuse my frustration, my emotions. I'm just appalled that this could even go into our neighborhood, our little neighborhood that we have. You guys have lived longer than we have, so hopefully I did you guys do. Did you guys are welcome. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. So as we mentioned earlier, the development project review forms go to the planning commission.
I will fill out
I would
everything.
say your next step would be after this meeting, because we're all citizens, is go to that planning commission when it's noticed. And
Absolutely, I will.
what is it?
Yeah.
January?
Yeah.
Planning commission.
That's good. And so I'm Joey Winter with the planning division. I'm not the planner directly assigned to this case, but I think I mentioned to a couple of the neighbors that Carter Williams, Mr. Carter Williams is the planner who is leading review of this development. And I can give you all his email. I can just say that right now if you'd like, and you can get to him directly. There's no decision being made tonight. As the chair mentioned, January 4th is the scheduled planning commission hearing. That's when there will be another public hearing. You can give comments, written comments before then. You can leave a voicemail that can be played at that hearing if you can't make it. And you could come to that hearing and you get 3 minutes again. Planning commission will hear it at that point. The applicant will present. And then just so you know where we're at in the process is that the reason why these come to these neighborhood advisory boards is for the applicant to get feedback. So I'm sure the applicant will take this feedback into account tonight. And I think he had his contact info available. This is not a finish. There's no vote being held tonight.
So have there been approval already given?
No.
On anything?
No,
There's
there's,
been no approval, it's just architect, this is what's happening.
this is the application that the property owner through their design team brought in. This application is under review by City of Reno staff. And this is a forum for the public to provide comments to.
Perfect.
To the
All right,
applicant.
I'm just curious, like, if I need to have approval, I want to know how I can contest this or go for it. Sorry, it's just a final one.
Yeah, okay. So the meeting is January 4th. Public hearing starts at 6 p.m. It is at City Hall, and then it's for a hybrid meeting like this one. So you could be on the Zoom and raise your hand and have the ability to speak. But in council chambers at City Hall, parking garage attached, parking, come on over. it'll be on the agenda. There'll be a couple items, but this item will come up at some point after 6 p.m.
Okay, so is there other comment on this?
Oh, yes, Tim Hofstone. I'm one of this catty corner. This would be behind about 20 feet of my property. When I look at the design, how does that fit in the neighborhood?
I'll work with our architect and I'll get his input on that question. I'm the civil engineer. And I usually take things from the ground below, so.
So about the drainage, because I went to Jenny, from a Jenny to another Jenny, I like the drainage question, like, obviously you guys are gonna deal with that, repiping and all of that good jazz. How is that gonna impact the area, sorry, Jeff from Madeline again, for all of the neighborhood, because it is an older neighborhood, how are.
I do have this one.
Oh, there you go. Right.
So, but what we're doing is, we're collecting, most of the storm drain is going to be directed into the street. And reduced and sent back out again, that you heard before, the pre-development, post-development rate. That, basically, we're gonna emit that water into the curb and gutter and into the existing, storm drain systems, the river's right there, so it's not gonna travel far. What we are also doing is, in addition to that, which that current plan, just that part of the plan meets code. But my thought was that if we do this, historically, this site, the street is high and everything drains to the south.
To my neighbor, to my house.
That's how it goes now. And so what we're actually gonna do is redirect a majority of the stormwater to the street. So that should improve things for you. And then beyond that, what we're doing is proposing, even though for code, this would not be required, but we're doing an infiltration area at the back here. So that and that will be sized to further alleviate, the existing storm drainage scenario where everything currently just slopes and is unrestrained to the properties to the south.
Is there a question? State your name again.
Dan Ryan. I live at the 2040 address. But I have a question on it being underground parking garage, because like you all stated earlier, there is no underground parking on Idlewild because it's a flood zone. It floods about every decade. What are you gonna do about that?
So this parcel is not in the flood zone, actually.
I've lived in that house for 29 years and I've definitely seen my street in Riviera flood.
So
And it, in 1997, all of Idlewild Park flooded.
yeah. So the underground parking does have a pump down there. And it will pump out if the street is full of water, obviously. So will the parking garage, but based on the current flood mapping, it's not in the flood zone, so. But that's the scenario.
So these are all comments that are gonna get taken. And you guys get these public comment forms to make sure that that's heard by the planning commission also. But
I don't know, before this, I don't know whether I should wait until the planning commission, but the map that you brought up that had the MF14s, the majority of the MF14s, those are all single family homes. And it gives the impression when those are MF14s, that those are multifamily properties. And they're not, they're just single families living in them. And so when you show a map like that, so oh, this isn't any different than what's going on in this neighborhood. It is. Those are single families, even though they're going MF14.
On that, the city has gone through and Jenny's been a part of the process. I know for the last, but how long has it been since the master plan started going, 5 years?
Yeah, I would say, because this is old Southwestern problem, is the MF14 has issues in terms of the setbacks and height. And I've been very vocal on that, but the priority of the council right now is marijuana lounges. So that's where we're doing our zoning work. But that 5 foot, when you go certain heights, needs to step in more. And that's how it is up in West University neighborhood. I wrote that code as a planner in 2002, but the council, and it's the way in Wells, but it hasn't been the council's priority, but the MF 14, you know, that's what it's allowing is the 5 foot, except for where you've got the rear, on the side, on the rear, you've got the 10 foot.
Yeah, and then as we get taller, we are stepping back the structure as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask one, Jennifer Metalhead, the record again? When was this approved for MF 14?
I think it's been always,
Always,
yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
the beginning of our neighborhood.
Well,
Before-
okay, your neighborhood was built before we had zoning in the city of Reno.
Okay.
No, no, consistently, I think that, you know, in my memory, it's pretty good. As good as a lot of, as probably anyone working with the zoning map in Reno right now. But I think that's always been the MF 14. The typical MF 14 though, in Reno was a 7,000 square foot lot with one house in the front and a smaller house alley in the back. You know, so alley served. You're in on very irregular lots here.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in your larger lot, what's point, how many square feet is that? It's gotta be 17,000.
The MF 14 is 1 for 3,000.
Yeah.
And so we're 5 units, so.
Yeah, so you're 17,000. But you've also got some weird.
Geometry.
Yeah, you do, and you almost have 2 front yards. I would call that a front yard, to be honest.
There's gonna be, well, this whole thing is the front yard here.
Not that little cut in over there is not,
No, it's-
that's all aside.
It's gonna be all sides.
This side and
Three yards. That's for the-
Also, I'm not sure that's the front, but.
Okay, other
Last question. I've got a question about the trash enclosures that were on the site plan.
Yeah.
So all 5 units go along our property, which is the 2040, sorry, it's not right at 2040 Idlewild. So it's not the corner one, but just to the right there. We're also, you said we're in an apartment complex, it's actually a single family.
Oh, well, sorry, I said north.
And I also have a question about the common space. You kind of breezed over that, how this is gonna work, because it seemed like all 5 units are gonna have a shared like closet and kitchen and everything in the middle. Could you go through that a little?
Oh, each unit will have it, they're independent units, they all have their own kitchen.
What was in the common
et
area?
cetera. And the common areas are bike storage closets, a bike repair area. I believe, the architect sent me a email with it. So they've got their roof deck, owner storage, bike repair and work area, individual gardens, common parking, and then they've got 5 EV parking or charging. Well, then on the second level, if you go to the next slide, these are the roof decks they're talking about. There's this shared one here, and then there's one here and one there.
But the trash enclosure issue, where's that? Because
If you go back to the.
that 5 units is a hard one. Sometimes they go one central trash and sometimes they go all individual trash.
So there's no way to do a central trash can on this where you have like a drive up and, you know, that the only place you can put it would be somewhere in the front and that'd be hideous and they wouldn't be able to get to it anyway. And so, the plan is to put them over here.
Is it enclosed or?
Yeah, there's an enclosure there.
Which happens to. Yeah. Yeah.
How would it be accessed?
Just via the sidewalk, the side sidewalk.
It's a long one here.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, there's someone for public comment who would like to speak on Zoom.
Okay, we'll hear that one on Zoom.
Nate Bass, if you can hear us, go ahead and give your public comment, please.
Yes, I'm the single family resident house directly across the street on Riviera. And I'm concerned with a couple issues with building. I just wanted to bring up stormwater drainage on Riviera Street. A few times this year, we experienced standing water up to 6, like above the sidewalk level, starting to come into the yard area this year alone. So I don't really see underground parking that close to the river being a realistic idea. Also, trash, that's a real issue. If you're saying that there's 2 guest parking areas in the front of the development, where are the trash cans going to be placed on trash day? Currently, the garbage cans are placed in the road. And then additionally, with that parking area, we're close to the park. And in reality, our street, Riviera Street, fills up on most weekends because of the events at the park already. So putting any more stress on the parking on our street will not allow residents to use their on-street parking for their own residents. This weekend alone, we had a vehicle that was parked there for over 48 hours without moving because of the proximity to the current apartment complex. The residents now park in front of our single family resident already. So how is this? I mean, it just doesn't seem very realistic, to be honest. So.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Just, this is probably for me, this, I'm Tim Hostel. All along Idlewild, you'll see the apartments and everything. This is taking a step into the single home neighborhood. We moved there 38 years ago, and it is a beautiful neighborhood. It's quiet, it's family, and as Jennifer said, we look out for each other and everything. And this, I can't begin to imagine the impact it's going to have on us and our way of life. And does anyone know what happens to single home property values when something like this goes in right up against our property value?
Thank you. So like, as I mentioned, there's.
Did anybody have an answer to that?
We won't have to, they may not have an answer, but the planning commission is where you want to go explain. So,
thank you.
Like we mentioned before, this is in its review stage, so every question they should be listening to and making their decisions from that. So we appreciate everybody's time tonight, and I feel the passion. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to be clear for everybody who came out, January 4th is when the item is scheduled to go to the planning commission. You all who received the notice, you'll receive another one in the mail. So don't throw it away. But if you do throw it away, there's also going to be a sign that will be required to be posted up, be a big yellow sign. Actually, it'll be smaller than the usual ones because this is a small site, but it'll be posted out front in an extremely visible spot. It will have the number for Carter Williams on it, his phone number, the date of the hearing, and the description of the project. So that will go up at least 10 days, business days, or 10 days actually in advance of any scheduled public hearing. Additionally, you'll get something in the mail. It'll be mailed at least 10 days before the public hearing.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate everybody's time tonight.
But for Joey, if they reach out to Carter, will he be sending things to us?
No, absolutely. As we get public comments to planning commission, we always share those with the applicant. So if you don't feel comfortable reaching directly out to the applicant and you want to bring it through the city, we share those in advance because our goal as a planning staff is to get the neighbors' concerns to the applicant as soon as possible. So they can be considered, and they'll be considered in staff's analysis, and then they'll be considered by the planning commission when they make the decision on this item.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for everybody's time tonight. Wish you all luck.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to item C, board, commission, committee member reports and announcements. Anybody?
For next time.
Yeah.
For next time.
It's the next item, C.
Oh.
Do we have anybody?
Yeah. Was there, whatever happened to the Sierra?
That is at council on Wednesday.
That's on this coming one?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have a report on that on,
And then,
Any other announcements? Thoughts? I want to move on to we'll move on to item D, future agenda items.
so I'm really feeling, Alexis Hill, we've asked her to come, and if she can't come, don't worry about it, she doesn't feel like she's been able to make it. But we really need to get RTC here. We need to understand where the Arlington Bridge is at. They're running a massive amendment to the regional transportation plan, and projects are shifting. And I think, Arlington Bridge may be one. And not to mention that now I'm the arts commissioner liaison, and they're already picking art for that one. I'm like, what's going on with that one? That one seems to be shifting. California Newlands was shown recently on the 24th. Dickerson, Mesa, what's going on with Mesa? And then also, it might be a city project, but the sidewalks on Plumas that the council discussed a while ago, and then the forest cycle track concept. But the sidewalks on Plumas, are you sure you get any input voicemail from Ann Bowl on that today? In your record? Okay, maybe she got confused and put it to the council for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll check. if we
Yeah,
can-
but anyways, we need RTC and all, stuff discussed. We spoke about Rob Drive, context of that. Wait, I left my glasses in the car and I can't, see some of my writing, but no, my allocation for Ward 1 federal money went to Oxbow, and the Parks Department has just swallowed that money. Likewise, they haven't done the sidewalks behind Idlewild Pool. That's been rolled over for 2 sets of money. So I'm ready to sweep money before the end of the year if the Parks Department isn't going to get that money done, because there's lots of needs in this ward, including a traffic calming on Sagittarius. And there are a lot of questions going on about what's going on with the city's neighborhood traffic calming project. And we also really need to understand the latest on the Riverside Drive fire. The ongoing story.
Yes.
Okay. I see Jerry's got his hand up.
I'd like to have an update on the city's stormwater proposal.
Well, Jerry, that's gonna be at council tomorrow. And I think we're really gonna just try and work on board specific issues here, so if we want to talk about what the CIP has for stormwater improvements in Ward 1, which this conversation really brought up, maybe we do it in that context. And I can brief everyone on what the council's direction is on the stormwater.
Okay.
But, the public input on the stormwater is at the council, very high level on Wednesday. So that's where that goes. Sometimes if we're doing stuff at the NAB, but it's really going on at the council level, it's kind of out of joint there.
So I would accept your idea about talking about the stormwater infrastructure as it relates to the ward in the CIP.
Yeah, we really do need to do that with that much of a hillside, all along that corridor. Yeah.
Okay. Next.
We mentioned last month, having the police here. I wanted to know more about the shootings.
Quarterly. They're supposed to come
Well,
quarterly.
that was September, wasn't it? They canceled.
They'll be here in January.
They're coming when?
They'll be here in January.
Okay, yeah.
January, okay.
Yeah, I'll work with Tyler not to have too many things on, but, our priority issues need to come.
Right. I just wanted to ask about that, and I wanted to give you a heads up because you pay attention to the airport. They redesignated the airport runway numbers.
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
Other agenda items? Nobody, has Jerry still got his hand up? or
Oh,
did he-
sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
I just want to check. Just don't want you to say I missed you. All right, I don't hear any other future agenda items. Next item is item E, public comment. We kind of already did those. Any other ones on?
I'm registered.
All right, next item. Yeah. Adjournment, this is for possible action.
My motion?
Yeah, if you like.
I move, we adjourn.
Adjourned at 8:25.
Okay, so we'll go
She can have it, no.
I was in here earlier.
All right, those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Everybody have a great holiday.
Okay, Nick, I'm leaving for Christmas.